It will come as no surprise to fans of this channel that Rolex's James Cameron Deepsea Seadweller is my favorite watch that I own in my collection. Here's a couple views of it, and you can see the spectacular dial. No wonder I love this watch. But Rolex has recently redone it as of Baselworld 2018, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what changes have been made to this watch. Let's have a look at mine in more detail. This is the first generation, or the prior to 2018 Baselworld. And it's a big watch. It's 44 millimeters wide, and I want to say 17 millimeters thick. But it tapers down to a very narrow oyster bracelet. And the criticism has long been that the watch being so big, thick, top-heavy, and so forth, that it wobbles on the wrist due to the lack of support on the narrow end of the bracelet. So you see how these bracelets on this watch narrow down to, I want to say 19 millimeters, maybe it's 20. I'll put something in the comments here to clarify that, but they go to a pretty narrow point, and that has caused a lot of people to find the watch unmanageably top heavy. Although the watch did suffer criticism due to its proportions, the 116660 reference number, James Cameron edition, was still very popular with collectors. It featured the 3135 Rolex movement. Now, the black version of this watch, which has the exact same reference number, confusing, isn't it? That black version came out in 2008, and as you know, was killed now in early 2018. But this blue James Cameron edition only came out in 2014 and was killed at the same time as the black one in early 2018. Again, these watches both had the same reference number. The black and the deep blue James Cameron edition had the reference number of 116660 with the 3135 movement. But we only had a little over 3 years of the blue James Cameron edition in this iteration or version. Now, in terms of collectability of the 116660 James Cameron or older James Cameron edition, in terms of its future collectability, I think it being discontinued after a little over 3 years is probably the best thing that could have possibly happened to its collectability and value in the long run, and we'll talk more about that in a few moments. Now, our first clue as to what Rolex might have done to the Deepsea Seadweller at Baselworld should have come from this Redline Seadweller, which they introduced mid-year at 43 millimeters, but one of its key features was a much wider bracelet. So it no longer tapers to such a narrow point. This is smaller than the James Cameron Deepsea Seadweller by 1 millimeter, and it's not quite as thick on the one hand. On the other hand, it's still a pretty massive watch, but due to that wider oyster bracelet, even at the narrowest point of the taper, it's a more manageable watch. So that should have given us a clue as to what was going to happen to the 44 millimeter Deepsea in black and also in the blue James Cameron edition. So here we have our first look at the new version of this watch, and in fact, it gets a new reference number. New for early 2018, we have the reference number of 126660. So the 2 has replaced the 1 in the second position, and this is what's common for Rolex when they update an iteration of their watches. There's also a movement change, guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about the movement, but it has gone from the 3135 movement in the prior edition to the 3235 movement in this new edition, and there are definitely some improvements there. But as we move to the bracelet, you will see that it tapers not nearly as much. So it has gone to a taper of, I want to say, 22 millimeters, and therefore it is not going to rock so much on the wrist. Let's take a little look around this watch. First, the dial remains utterly magnificent. The chartreuse lettering of Deepsea still matches James Cameron's submersible that went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. This is a magnificent watch, and as far as I know, the aesthetic has not really changed on the dial, which of course is the main part of this watch. I think instead the main difference will be that bracelet and the movement. Here's another view, and again, I have to stress these dials look incredible in natural light, not so much in artificial light, but it's amazing. This is just a beautiful watch. We'll take another quick look at those lugs, redesigned a little bit to allow for that wider tapering bracelet. What that's going to do, guys, is that's going to make this watch more humane. It is massive, but most people find the 116660, the original version, difficult to wear. And I think what they're looking to do is to make this a more humane watch so that more people will buy it, and therefore they will, of course, make more money and more sales. But what that means is we had a version of the watch out there considered by most to be a mistake. It only lasted 3 years, and it's iconic for a number of reasons, including it was the first Rolex ever officially named for anybody. The Paul Newman Daytona, for example, all that's done by collectors. The Batman collectors named that, but the James Cameron was named such by Rolex. So it is indeed an icon, and I'm really glad to have the first iteration, even if it's a little harder to wear. Fortunately, Rolex has left in place the glide lock clasp for the James Cameron, although they have re-engineered it to make it a bit wider to accommodate that widening of the oyster bracelet. Interestingly, the Submariner has a glide lock clasp too, but its mechanism is on the underneath and inside of the bracelet, whereas the glide lock clasp on the James Cameron Deepsea Seadweller is on the outside, which means on only that watch can you adjust it on the fly, and I often do on mine. So if I'm wearing my James Cameron and my wrist starts to swell up a little bit in the summer, I do not need to take it off in order to make that adjustment. That's brilliant, and the same holds true for this second version. Now, guys, we have to talk a little bit about this 32-35 movement that replaces the older 31-35 in the previous edition. And there is a lot new about it. First of all, that 32-35 has 14 patents. It's not a very brand new movement because it was introduced back in 2015 at Baselworld on another edition, but it is finally making its way to the 12660. However, be aware, it's a pretty different movement from the 31-35, which is the previous version, in that 90% of its parts are different. I'm not going to belabor all the little differences because I'm not especially a movement engineer. However, I will tell you some of the important stuff is it has a new escapement, it is more shockproof, and I think the most important thing to the average consumer is that it has gone from about a 42-hour power reserve up to a 70-hour power reserve, so that's a really significant improvement. So let's talk about money. The James Cameron Blue Edition of the 12660 is going to retail for, at least in the United States, it's going to retail for $12,550. You guys in the UK and Australia seem to have to pay a whole lot more, but that's the price here in the States. Now, there is a black version, also with the same reference number, the 12660 in black. And interestingly, it retails for a little bit less than the blue, but not much. It's going to retail in the States for $12,250, and that is only $300 less than the blue one. But the black is a whole lot less special, in my opinion. So what's going to happen to sales? Collectability, black versus blue, new versus old? Well, time will tell. But if Rolex holds true to form, they're going to be very stingy with production in the blue version, and it'll be a lot easier to find and buy the black in this new version. Therefore, I suspect that the new James Cameron will be inflated in price on the gray market and very hard to find at a dealer. I think you'll have a much easier time finding the black one. Your consolation is you're going to save a whopping $300, but I don't think it's as cool. What do you guys think? Well, we're going to close on this picture of my 116660, which is now a discontinued collectible Rolex in production for only a smidgen over 3 years. I'm as pleased as punch. Guys, if you have one of those watches, one of those older editions, keep it. If you're interested in one of the new ones, let me know in the comments. What do you think about the new one versus the old one? And what do you think about that blue versus black? What do you think Rolex's strategy is here? Would you rather have a watch that's far more collectible, or would you rather have a watch that's far more comfortable to wear? Rolex doesn't make many mistakes. I think that the 116660 with its narrow band and its wobbly top-heavy nature was a bit of a stumble, and they're correcting that now. So doesn't that make it more rare and valuable? Tell me what you think. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.